In this tutorial, I'll show you how to make your application icons stand out from the crowd. Coming up, we'll take a look at simple strategies for icon production, and I'll show you how to export all the right formats for mobile. But first, let's take a look at the top 5 do's and don'ts for making great icons. First, define the space with a solid border or background shape. In Touch UI, this also indicates the strike area. Emphasize one main idea. Zoom in tight or crop it like a close-up. Use graphics, not photos. Photographic detail will get lost on handsets. Keep it big, bold, and simple. Exaggerate the contrast between foreground and background elements. Color contrast also enhances readability. Leverage universal symbols. For example, this Tweety icon uses the speech bubble, a widely recognized symbol for messaging. Now let's take a look at the top 5 don'ts. Don't use too much detail. Too much detail will get lost at small sizes and the icon becomes hard to read. Here the black car on the black pavement against the skyline is virtually unreadable on the handset. Don't shrink the company logo to fit the space. Here, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire shrinks down to just a blurry circle. It needs to be simplified in this situation. Don't rely on subtle contrast to carry the idea. Here we've got a camera on a green background and the camera itself is the quintessential element, but it's so small you can't even see it. Don't make use of heavy Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator filters. This is more production than a design tip, but it will help you out in the end. Don't rely on transparency or a certain background color to make your image work. Here the points on this logo are going to get lost on a busy background. And here, Mr. Twiddle was wearing a bow tie and ready to go social networking before I transferred him to a black background. Here he looks like he's going to church. The answer, of course, was to define the space with a solid shape and make it a warm gray so it would work on either a light or dark background. Now let's take a look at some further drawing strategies in Adobe Illustrator. Here we are in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm using this Tweety icon to show you a few basic production strategies. The first thing you'll want to do is open a new document and set the size to 80 by 80 pixels. Then you can come in here and make an icon like this using just a couple basic shapes. First, for the background, I'll show you all I did is use the rounded rectangle here under the Shapes menu. Then, a trick here is I come over to the canvas and hold down the Alt key or the Option key and click once to bring up the dialog. Then you can enter your dimensions numerically and say OK, and that puts a shape down auto-magically. For the highlight, I simply made a copy of this basic shape and then cut the copy right in half and added a curve point in the middle. This is now a Bezier curve that I can click and drag and adjust. Now to create the speech bubbles, I've got a couple choices. One, I could draw them, but that takes time. 2, I might be able to find them in a symbol font and convert to outlines, like webdings. Here I'll make a quick speech bubble using Shift and parentheses, either left or right parentheses. There's a speech bubble, and to get control of all the points like we have in Illustrator, all I have to do is right-click and create outlines. And that makes a vector object, just like we're used to in here. Another good thing to do is to look in the Symbols palette. Earlier, I found in the mobile library the exact speech bubble I was looking for. All you have to do is click and drag it out onto the working area here. Now, I'll just right-click to use the local menus a few different times here until I drill down to this black shape that's nested in the middle. Click and release compound path, and now I've got that same type of speech bubble I was using before. Now obviously I've made a few modifications. I've added a blend and a drop shadow, and instead of repeating all of those steps, I'll just hold down the Alt key and slide over a copy and then reflect the copy just like that. Size it up a bit, and this is basically how I created this simple icon. Now let's turn this graphic into an SVG icon. I'll go to the File menu and select Save for Web and Devices. And then over here on the right, I'll choose SVG from the drop-down and SVG 1.1 from the drop-down right below. And click Save. And I'll put this on my desktop. Now I can include this icon in my next Symbian Series 60 package. Now I'm going to show you how to make an ICO file from this same graphic. The first thing you need is a Photoshop plugin for making ICO files. I found a good one here at telegraphics.com.au/SW. The plugin for CS3 works very well on the Mac, and there's only one choice here under Windows. Now once you get that installed into the plugins folder, you can bring up Photoshop and copy and paste right into here from Illustrator. Now another caveat here is to turn off the background image to get the transparency in the corners. Now with that plugin installed, all I do is come up to the File menu and select Save As, not Save for Web and Devices as we did before, just Save As. Now this brings up this dialog, and because I have the plugin installed, I now have a choice of the ICO format down here from the drop-down. And my icon name has just changed to tweetyicon.ico. Now I'll save that and just go ahead and say yes to standard ICO. And now that's on my desktop and ready to be included with my next CAB package. In sum, we've taken a look at the top 5 do's and don'ts of creating great application icons. Inside Adobe Illustrator, we've found ways to leverage the Shapes menu, common fonts, and symbols found in the libraries. We've saved our icons as SVG files for Symbian Series 60 devices by going to the File menu and saving for Web and Devices. For Windows Mobile, we've saved ICO files using a plugin you can find at telegraphics.com. So with a few inside tips, it's easy to create great application icons.